ELA AM, let's talk about it.
Hey, Chad, Peter Abbarno. How are you?
Peter, I was hoping that you would call this morning. I have a couple of questions for you.
Well, I've got a couple answers
Well,
for
I
you.
knew that you would. Can
But
you
let me.
stick with us through the break real quick?
I need.
Are you getting ready to go to committee? We'll go to break late. Let's
Go to break late.
here's my question. I would love to know what's going on with the transportation budget. I've been hearing different things come about, and I was hoping that you could fill us in.
Well, and I will.
Okay.
Let me first comment on Sean. Congratulations, Sean's doing a great job,
Yeah.
and I agree with you. I mean, the kids need to be unmasked. I've been saying this for now 2 years, and finally, we have bipartisan agreement because the Democrat governors in New Jersey and Connecticut and New York, Oregon, California are all lifting mandates and lifting the mandates in schools too. And at 2 o'clock today, the governor's having a press conference, and I'm urging him to follow the bipartisan governors from across the country in lifting these mandates for our kids. Look, I mean, the science and data has been there, and I get it. Early on, everyone was trying to feel their way through, figure out what was going on, but it's clear now that children are not at any high risk, and the detriments of kids wearing masks in school all day long are really taking their toll, and it needs to end. On the way to school
Absolutely.
this morning, my daughter, who's 10 years old, says to me, "Dad, we should move to Connecticut or New Jersey or Virginia." And all of a sudden I'm realizing, boy, she's watching a lot of news because she's naming off every single, she even said even Oregon, she's naming every single state that's lifting these mandates. And
Wow.
even kids as young as 9 and 10 are paying attention, and you can see that in some of the protests in PL and other places. So, you know, the time for optional masks is long gone. We should have been doing that a year ago, but now it's time to do it. Now on transportation, the Democrats released their transportation budget, and it relies heavily on not only your fuel costs going up because of cap and trade and low carbon fuel standards, but increase in license plates, increases in driver's license. The fees are going to be piled on top of each other, which is not going to improve the roadways and maintenance that we need. And so
Right.
it's pretty disappointing that they're going to invest it all up in King County and ferries and electrification of ports up there rather than roads and bridges and the things we need to be focusing on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they can. It seems like they continue to find ways around 695, right?
Ah.
I mean, Initiative 695 and most of us probably know what that is, but that was what took our licensing fees down to $30 back in the day. I mean, we used to pay $700 a year to license a car, and that got fixed. I think it got fixed. It did create some pretty large funding gaps for local municipalities, and they were never really handled. But the state, could have came back and helped the local governments out, but they didn't. But the state now is trying to find ways to go around that, I think.
You're right on, Chad. I mean, look, the state right now has $11 billion surplus. And, the people have already voted. $30 car tabs is what we want. And in December, Representative Andrew Barkis, who represents the 2nd District, but it's actually from Chehalis and it's got family so local.
Good guy.
He is a great guy. And he introduced the REAL Act, which is a reprioritization and shifting of money that should not be going into the general fund. It should be going into transportation. We can improve our roads, improve infrastructure and bridges without having to raise money in a regressive manner that really hurts working families and small businesses. It's the fact that Olympia, as I've learned in my first term, boy, there's a huge bureaucracy. Nobody thinks like a business person to say, look, there's ways that you can do this by shifting your priorities and focusing on investments rather than just spending money. And Andrew has a great plan, and I'm hoping it gets a little bit of traction. But after yesterday's press conference, it looks like it's going to be the same old, same old. Let's raise fees and taxes. Let's focus on things like, what I always call these like chic, marginal plans. Like let's focus on ferries.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
how about we focus on bridges and potholes and roads and infrastructure so that truck drivers and can deliver goods, and so flooding doesn't cover I-5.
I think a lot of people would think the same way that you're thinking on that. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we cut to break, Peter, can you touch on housing and affordable housing?
Yeah, that would tie
briefly?
in real good.
Yeah, look, in our community, it's less about housing and more about infrastructure. We need to improve sewer, water, wastewater. We need to make sure that when money comes for housing, we actually have the infrastructure to support it. The state or the federal government can come in with some money for housing, but it's going to get eaten up in the infrastructure side of it. And in our community, it's an aging infrastructure. So, I think the county and the cities have done a very good job in their zoning and their planning. The question is, how do we get the money in to actually effectuate it? There's two things going on. There's a lack of housing inventory at all levels, and there's a lack of infrastructure to actually build it. Our needs locally are not merely about affordable housing, right? It's about all housing. And there's a bottleneck right now where people who could afford more expensive homes or want them have to buy cheaper homes, improve them, raise the rates and the values, and they're pricing people out at the bottom as well.
Okay.
So we need to be building housing at the top end, at the bottom end, and everywhere in between. But it starts with digging underground, and it starts with actually getting the infrastructure necessary to actually support housing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the other thing is too, don't pass on the number of regulations to the Growth Management Act, all these layers, right?
Oh man.
That keep adding to the cost to building. I mean, building materials are expensive right now, thanks to our buddy Joe in Washington D.C. But in addition to the costs in inflation and the cost of materials is the fact that you have to go through all these studies 2, 3, 4 times before you can build anything, and people just get priced out.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it almost impossible.
It makes it hard for the people that go to college and come back and get a job. But it's hard for them to buy a house that's on the lower end.
Starter house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the price of a starter house is not what it used to be, and you're right, Franklin. It does make it hard for people that want to come back to our community to start a life, raise a family, get a job, to do that. And so Peter, investing in the trades, right? Making sure that folks know that the trades are a great place to go if you want to, if you don't want to go to college, you can go be a carpenter, you can be work in the pipe fitters, you can do a lot of other things.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think that apprenticeships are key.
Mm-hmm.
I think our community colleges are key, and creating this opportunity that people can be college bound or career ready is really important. Unfortunately, a lot of the regulations that are being passed, whether it be cap and trade, whether it be banning natural gas, are job killers.
Right.
On one side, we're saying let's go into apprenticeships in the trades and let's really cultivate this career-ready student. And on the other side, you're killing their jobs and you're getting rid of them because of environmental regulations where you can't build anymore.
So is there anything positive that's coming out of this session that's going to benefit Lewis County, or is it all really a defensive strategy, try to get as many bad bills not passed?
No, I think on the margins there's some really good things happening. I think there's investments in behavioral health. There's investments in reducing taxes on B&O taxes for businesses. I think we're going to see through capital budget there's going to be some good investments in hopefully infrastructure and things like that. Broadband, you heard about Lewis County and Toledo Tel receiving money. I mean, hydrogen, last year we got a capital through capital budget, we got a refueling station. This year, Representative Orcutt and I are working on hydrogen sales tax and incentives to actually create hydrogen. Lewis County is at the forefront of that. So there's some good things coming out, but really the theme, and I said this at our town hall last week with Representative Orcutt and Senator Braun, it's like a Bob the Builder type legislative session where we're just fixing everything they broke last year. Some of it's getting fixed. A lot of it is just going to stay broken or not, still going to have a lot of scratches on it. And we're hoping that the flavor of the legislature is different next year. And after November, and we can really come in and try to bring some balance to Olympia, which it's direly needed.
I love that. Yeah, it's definitely needed.
I think that we do. I mean, speaking of a different flavor in Olympia, you think that that's a possibility?
I do. This is one of those years where parents are energized. Parents from across the board, regardless of where you live, what your political affiliation is, most of them are not politically active and have become politically active because of issues of protecting their children, improving education, the things that I think Republicans have been really good on those issues in the past, but haven't had the ability to communicate real well. And I think you're seeing that emerging of those ideas. I think you're seeing a lot of trades folks who traditionally were, blue-collar Democrats. You saw them flip in the 19th last year or 2 years ago. I think they're seeing their industry of, like you said, carpenters, pipe fitters, career-ready students are more conservative and Republican because we're fighting for their jobs. And the Democrats in Olympia have moved so far to the left on these environmental issues that, like banning natural gas.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, the police reform issues. I mean, the defunding. I mean, I think they've adopted two extreme positions on issues that are really important to working families. And I think next year, or I guess this fall, could be a really good year for Republicans.
Yeah, I think so. I think I think it's in your hands, right? I think that all of the grassroots efforts that are going on, the new folks that maybe haven't looked at what your party or our party stands for, and who they actually represent. I think that the Republicans have always represented the working class families. Well, at least the last decade, right? Last 2 decades, we've really focused on being the party that is an inclusive party that anybody can be part of. And I don't know. I think that people are starting to open their eyes to that. Peter, I really appreciate you.
I hear the music.
I know.
Great
I
job
know.
on the show.
Peter, thank you, man.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you calling in. The show went by again, Franklin, so fast.
It cruises by.
It does.
We got real quick.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I know that the listeners are probably super excited to hear about how the babies are doing, so thanks for that update.
Oh, man.
I love it. Thank you for listening. We appreciate this opportunity and want to, just say thank you for listening to local radio. KELA AM, is just one of those local gems that we have to protect and support.